think a lot of you are probably here because you want to hear about where exactly I pee, which is, I mean, it's a bit strange. I think that question really does tap into that curiosity, I want to put a slightly positive spin on it. I'm gonna be honest, this seems like a terrible idea. I have no idea. Well, actually, I do have a good idea why I'm going to be talking about this, but it feels like a very bad idea. But anyway, today I'm going to be talking about bathrooms. Good luck, everyone. Now, this isn't something I've really covered on my channel before. I might have touched on it a few times in the comments section, but I've certainly not outright made a video about it. And there's a variety of reasons for that. First and foremost, goodness gracious, this is a terrible format for having this conversation. It's really bad. There's no way I'm going to be able to cover all of the vagaries and nuances in what I intend to be a 15-minute video. It's probably going to be longer than that, but we'll see. It's atrocious. I'm not going to do this justice. I'm not going to be able to cover your particular point of view or your personal position on this. So I suppose I have to apologize right from the jump to all cis and trans people. I will get so much wrong, and I will get things wrong from your position. I'm going to be talking about things primarily from my experience and my personal point of view, but that does by no means invalidate or mean that I think that mine is the only morally correct solution here. And secondly, I recognize that bound in with this conversation are very real and very visceral traumas that a lot of people have experienced. Another reason why I haven't made videos on this topic is also because I don't feel like I've had the maturity of thought to be able to do this conversation justice. I'd like to think that through interacting with people on my comment section and elsewhere, I've gained a kind of a broader understanding of different people's positions on this. But there's still so much to learn and so much to say. I see this video more as a kind of a jumping off point for conversation, and maybe in a year or so's time, if I'm still making these videos, I might return to this and provide a little mini update to see if my position has changed at all. Because I can look back at some of the things that I said in my past on my channel as well and think, ooh, that's not aged well. So those are just a few of the reasons why I've not addressed this at this stage. So why, in the face of all of those very good reasons as to why I've not made this video before, why am I making it now? Well, I think first of all, people are coming onto my channel and they are raising this issue. And to be honest, I don't think I've responded to those comments particularly well, because I'm a bit muddled and confused perhaps. So I want to give it a better shake. And also, if I can come up with a way that makes a little bit more sense, maybe I can point those commenters towards that video. So don't worry, I'm going to get to the whole bathroom thing. But first I want to talk a little bit about fear. Now, what I'd like you to do, if you can, is think back to 1998. And something happened then that I think was quite interesting. What could it be? The Titanic winning 11 Oscars? The Clinton Lewinsky scandal? Could it be David Beckham becoming a hate figure because he was sent off during the World Cup? No, none of those things. In February 28th, Andrew Wakefield published a study alleging a link between the MMR and autism. Now, if you don't know about this study, I strongly recommend you go and check out H-Bomber Guy's video, because it's very comprehensive and it will give you much more detail that I'm going into. Now, what's particularly interesting about this study isn't so much the study itself, because that's been soundly and widely debunked many times over, but it's the way that it was dealt with and treated in the media. If you were in the UK at least, this study was impossible to ignore for years almost. That's all you would hear about. Well, all you would hear about. There was the David Beckham sending off as well, but you'd hear about this. Are vaccines safe? Is there a link between vaccines and autism in the news? Every day, every month, for years on years, that's what you would hear. And so inevitably, what with the imagery and the concerned and worried parents and the so-called experts talking about their fears and concerns, that's going to lead to fear amongst the population. And we can see that all this triggered a much reduced take up of vaccines nationally. Measles, rates of measles increased. Kids died because of this. And so can we say that the media is complicit in those deaths? I mean, it's kind of a feature of how media, especially news media, reports stories. You can see how it works, and we should be familiar with this narrative today. They find a story, they talk about how this might have implications for you and for your children, and then they just go ape wild with it, knowing full well that if they get a lot of engagement, a lot of clicks, a lot of shares, they're going to generate money. And media empires such as Facebook and other platforms, they know full well what gets people engaged is what makes people angry. And you can see evidence of this time and time again. I mean, look at your own behaviors. How many times have you seen a headline or something, a reference to an article, and you've gone, oh my God, I can't believe it, and clicked on it, or even shared it with your friends? Can you believe this story? What lunacy is this? What are they making us do now? And it's all designed to annoy and infuriate. The pattern's the same. Experts are there to be doubted. You should have an opinion on this particular thing. You need to make an opinion, and it needs to be an extreme opinion. There is no room for moderate stuff here. And everybody's opinion and perspective gets equal weighting and respect. Is that fair? I'll let you decide for that one. But beyond that, as I've said, the more views, the more likes, the more clicks, the more money these articles generate. The more angry people get, the more likely they are to share and view these articles. So is it fair and reasonable to say that the media has a vested interest in pushing hate and anger? Well, again, I'll let you decide for that one. But for me, I think it's fairly clear what the answer is. But the thing is, one thing to bear in mind is the fear of science in this instance is perfectly reasonable. Look at all of the awful things that have happened in the past that are based on things that will be helpful. You've got thalidomide, you've got asbestos, you've got microplastics in cosmetics. All of these things were awful, and we were told that this is going to be beneficial for us, and it absolutely wasn't. So it makes sense for us to be suspicious of what we're being told by the scientific community sometimes. So what's all this got to do with bathrooms, perhaps you're asking? Well, maybe you're already making the connection here, because for me, that pattern, that narrative in the media, it's very similar to how so many other things are playing out across different narratives. Look at the climate change thing. I mean, obviously there's a direct link between the Wakefield stuff and COVID vaccine discussions. And when it comes to the trans bathroom debate, I can't help but think that perhaps there's a little bit of that going on as well. Now, I just mentioned that the science stuff, the science doubt, it's based on actual real bad events, and it's perfectly valid and understandable for people to have a bit of suspicion about science and progress and all that sort of thing. And similarly, women's safety is absolutely something which makes complete sense. I mean, look at the stories that come out in the last few years. You've got police officers murdering women, you've got all of the data, you've got all of the stories, you've got child bride, you've got the revocation of abortion rights in so many countries. Women are literally under attack. at a mass scale. And all we really want is just a place where we can get some kind of solitude, where we can go get some peace. Maybe we can pee, you know, check our makeup, fix any kind of clothing problems we might be having, wardrobe malfunctions. So women's safety and the sanctity of women's spaces is absolutely a valid and a real and a good conversation to be having. But think about all of the things that are being done to women. Is it trans folk that are the cause of those things? It's certainly not me. And I know that there are some bad actors in the trans so-called community, but that's just because we're human. I don't think that there is a morally pure demographic anywhere out there. Yeah, I just want to say that I really do get it. I do understand, and I do understand the genuine, deep-seated, long-standing fear that women have to deal with. And so it's that fear, that pre-existing fear, that was a tinderbox ready to be exploited by people, especially the media. All of these fears can be tapped into to generate some kind of content. I just want to say, because you might not be able to tell, but it's an absolutely beautiful morning today. There's so many people out and about. It's crazy. There's dog walkers, there's runners, there's joggers. I mean, it's wild because I'm kind of making a relatively hard-hitting sort of video today, and there's just so many people just out enjoying this sunny end of January day in Poland. It's really quite nice. Now, whether or not this narrative and this conversation is being pushed and discussed by people who actively have bad intentions towards trans people, or it's just a bit of misappropriation of that fear, the result is the same. Ultimately, trans people are being placed front and center in that conversation on the attack on women. And it's a conversation that we didn't really ask to be part of. We don't want to be here. But unfortunately, just like as I'm making this video, we kind of have our arms twisted into doing so. And it's not really fair. So what I'm saying is, why are some people afraid of trans people? Well, maybe it's because they're being told they should be, when the facts speak for themselves. Ultimately, we're much more likely to be victims rather than perpetrators. But that message still exists, that somehow we are the problem. Anyway, so what's my call to action here? What do I want us to take away from this? Well, I want us to remember that media, even this video that I'm making here, it's designed to trigger a response. It's designed to give you an emotional reaction. And maybe you're watching this video and you're feeling angry for one reason or other. How dare I talk about this, perhaps? Which is fine, you know, I understand it. And I am sympathetic to all women's issues. But it's designed to create an emotional response for a reason. We want engagement. I want engagement. And just try to bear that in mind. Is this something that you actually want to buy into and promote? Maybe the best kind of engagement is disengagement from certain platforms owned by people with extremely right-wing views, whoever they are. For trans people, maybe we need to show a little bit of grace to women at large. And I know this debate is incredibly complicated, and trans people are so unusual that it's quite unlikely that a lot of cis people have bumped into us and had these sorts of conversations in an honest and open way. They're coming into this with a lot of baggage. They've had to deal with a lot of shit as well. So we need to be patient of certain people. And for cis people, especially cis women, let's say, for example, you think you see a trans woman in a bathroom. Well, have a look at her. Take a long look at her. Look at Look at her eyes. How do you think she feels? Is she nervous? Is she scared? Is she worried about what lies outside of that door? Perhaps what's inside of that door? Can you detect a certain false confidence, perhaps, as she tries to project this sense of belonging and confidence in the world? Do you see some of yourself in there? Some of your sister, some of your mother, some of your daughter? And if you do, maybe, I don't know, compliment her hair, her makeup, give her a friendly, welcoming smile. Or maybe just leave her be. She just wants to pee in peace. But I know that a lot of you aren't here to listen to my prattlings about things like trauma and nuance. I think a lot of you are probably here because you want to hear about where exactly I pee, which is, I mean, it's a bit strange. Anyway, so where do I pee? So at work, we have a gender neutral bathroom. Well, it's not a bathroom, it's a toilet. Let's be honest. Let's use the right terminology here. There's no bath in there. And I use that. I have used the women's bathroom once. Toilet once. But there was literally nobody else in the office. And so I thought I'd give it a try, seeing as no one else was there, so it seemed fairly safe. So I use the gender neutral place every day, and that's fine. When I'm out and about, I try to time my toilet breaks for when we are in a cafe. All of the cafes that I go to have gender neutral bathrooms, in that they only have one. So that's where I'll go. Now, so far, I've not had to pee in, say, a shopping centre or an airport where gender neutral bathrooms just don't exist. So I suppose the question is, what would I do in that case? And I suppose my response to that would be whatever seems like the best thing in that particular situation. And I know that's not a particularly satisfactory answer. I know that you'd probably like me to take a stand and say I would definitely use the women's bathroom, but I don't know. I go to yoga. I try to go to yoga 2 or 3 times a week, but at the moment it's only one. And I use the male locker space there. And I can't stress this enough, really fucking hate it. It's incredibly uncomfortable. I know that you can't tell because, you know, I mean, I've got this face and my body's hidden under a giant coat, but my body is really quite female. You'll have to trust me on this one. So it's incredibly uncomfortable being in that space. But why do I use it? Well, I don't know. I mean, I know a lot of the other women that go to this yoga class, and we get on quite well, and I think they know about me. But it would feel like an imposition. And for me, it would only take 1 or 2 people to feel uncomfortable in my presence for that to be, I would find that difficult myself. And beyond that, you know, this isn't a big chain. The owner of the yoga school isn't some millionaire swanning around in an Audi. It's an independent studio owned by somebody that I really like. I wouldn't want to cause her any problems or trouble if somebody was to go on, say, her Instagram or Google reviews and started to give her 1-star review on my behalf. I would really hate that. So I use the men's spaces, but I do feel uncomfortable. I do feel unsafe. And it's a calculated move because, you know, how many men go to yoga? It's almost like a joke, isn't it? Not that many is the answer. So it's a bit of a calculated risk. But sometimes there's groups of guys in there, and it's an open space, by the way. It's super bad, but you know, I'll soldier on. It's fine. So that's what I do. Now, obviously, a lot's been said about whether or not I and other trans women should be allowed into women's bathrooms. Now, for me, that's it's a difficult thing to do, like practically speaking. I'm fairly self-selecting. I'll go into the gender-neutral bathrooms. I have used women's bathrooms in the past, but I have to say, I would feel quite anxious in doing so. But let's say that there's a ban, right? I mean, I think, and let's be honest here, I think most people would be able to tell that I'm a trans woman looking at me. I don't know, I suspect that. Lots of people tell me that I don't pass like this is some kind of secret that they've uncovered. It's like, yeah, I know, I can tell. I've got a mirror, right? It's quite sweet of you to point that out, but I know. But what about those who don't pass? I mean, sorry, those who do pass. What about those who pass well enough to go unnoticed? And what about all of those cis women who are fairly masculine presenting? What then? And we know that they get caught in this storm. We've seen some very famous examples last year where cis women were accused of being trans despite the fact they lived and were from a country where being trans is illegal, and they grew up as a girl. So, does it really feel like it's protecting all women? And the arbitration of who passes and who doesn't, it seems to be very close to a kind of policing of women need to look feminine enough for me. And that's bad for everyone, you know? And it kind of makes me think when people are coming onto my channel and telling me that I'm not trying hard enough or that I'm not looking female enough, it does make me think, is this me being welcomed into womanhood? I don't know. Maybe I'm not taking that seriously for some of you, but it's an odd thought. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up there. Even though I know I haven't talked about half the things I wanted to. I had like a whole list in my head at 4 a.m. It's like I want to talk about this. But I think I've prattled on far too long. And there's still so many things, as I say, left unsaid. I mean, what about sports, for instance? Well, I'm not going to talk about that today. You can try to raise it in the comments section, but you're not going to get me on that one. Not here, not now. I need to develop myself a little bit more on that one. But yeah, I'd be curious to see what you think. I'm bracing myself, I have to be honest. This was a terrible mistake. This was a bad idea. But see you in the comment section. And actually, if you stick around, I'll give you a bit more of a life update and the comment of the week in a mo. So first of all, a little bit of a life update. Last time I was talking a little bit about my work stresses, and I have to be honest, they haven't really gone away. We still don't have any clarity or certainty there, and in fact, if anything, it's gotten worse. I did have quite an interesting little conversation with my global EDI group as well, where I asked the question about whether or not my company should still be using Twitter or X as one of its communication social media platforms, and that launched into quite an interesting conversation across the entire global network, which I didn't really anticipate, but that was interesting. I have to be honest, I haven't been sleeping very well lately. I've been taking some kind of gummies to help me sleep because I've had quite a lot on my mind, what with work and what with the world at large apparently being on fire. So yeah, head's not in a fantastic place, as maybe this video and my next video might attest. But, you know, in terms of how I am personally, I'm doing really well. And to kind of illustrate that, just like with last week, I'd like to celebrate another one of my outfits. In this one, this is actually an outfit that I wore to work last week, and I was super happy with it. The trousers are from COS, and I spent much more than I would have liked to spend on them. The top is from Risk Made in Warsaw, once again, one of my favourite brands, and the little cardigan-y thing I actually bought in a vintage store in Madrid, of all places. So if you find yourselves in Madrid, check out this vintage store. I'll try to find a link and put the location in the description below. Oh, and one more thing I just need to point out, you might notice a bit of redness in my eyes. It's because I got my eyebrows waxed yesterday, and I've had I think, allergic reaction to something that I tried to use to calm that pain down. So yeah, it didn't work, and now they're red. It really sucks. And let's move on now to my comment of the week. And actually, this was quite a difficult thing for me to choose, because some of the comments in my last video I thought were absolutely fantastic. So thank you very much for everybody who added to the conversation. I actually got 100 comments in that last video. So there was a lot of conversation going on, and I really enjoyed all of it. One person, your sharing your journey and your story was absolutely amazing, and I really wanted to use that whole thread as my comment of the week. But I've been thinking about this for 2 weeks actually, and it's really great. I love hearing everybody's stories. That absolutely makes my day. And commenter Madeline Alice, I really loved sharing. And thank you so much for sharing your story with me and everybody else on this channel. But actually, my favorite comment is sort of buried somewhere. And it comes from someone called Shira Lisa Maria. Shira Lisa Mira 3661. First of all, they say that I'm delusional, which is interesting, that I'm playing make-believe. But then the next comment I found to be really quite interesting, and I think it's something which, it raises a question which is absolutely quite relevant and important for people to answer. I'll read the quote, I'll read the comment. So, I understand it's very real to you. Why would anyone in their right mind want to be a woman or pretend to be a woman who could never pass as a woman? As woman, it's to be hunted sexually, vulnerable to abuses in every area of life, bleeding every month, children, emotional craziness because of hormones. I just don't get it, unless you think you will get something from pretending to be a woman that you don't have now. Something magical. What will you get? 1 year on hormones. Wow, not any feminization can I see. Great. But I think that question really does tap into that curiosity, I want to say. I want to put a slightly positive spin on it, that people have around trans people. Like, what is it? Why are we doing this to ourselves? What do we gain from this? Why do we feel we want to be a woman? You know, and it's interesting. I have quite a few women sharing how awful it is to be a woman. And I think within that is the question, why would you give up the privilege of malehood to take on this awful existence? And I get it. I understand where that's coming from, absolutely. And I can see why you would feel a little bit curious about why we were doing this. And from that question, you can then see how suddenly people start to wonder what our possible motivations are. And this is why I found this comment really interesting. I found it such an honest question, such an honest statement, getting to the kind of bones of why people often are suspicious of us. And I guess the only response I can make to that is I don't have a choice in this. I didn't choose to be trans. I didn't choose really to transition. It's something that I had to do. I thought it was a really honest question, and I thank you so much, Shira Lisa Mira 3661. Sorry if I can't say your name right. You know, these are the sorts of questions, the sorts of comments that I really appreciate on my channel. That level of honesty of thought. And yeah, it was really interesting having that conversation. So thank you very much. Yeah, that's it for today's video. I know this has probably gone on a little bit longer than I expected it to, but thank you for watching to the end. I look forward to hearing your contributions to this discussion in the comment section below. I know I'm ready and waiting for a bit of a storm perhaps, but we'll see what we get.